My wife and I have been building a cabin in the woods, and we chose to build it at the top of a hill. It was the right choice, but getting building supplies and gear up there have been a real challenge. Over time, the hill has started to erode and become increasingly slippery, especially in wet and snowy weather. It's not just inconvenient anymore, it's a liability. That ends now. In this video, I'll show you how I built a set of stairs using railroad ties, cutting them to size with a chainsaw, digging out the hillside, placing and leveling each step, and securing them with rebar. They turned out great, and they'll be a solid long-term solution for getting up and down the hill. I'm Kyle, and this is Wicked Alaska. And bring a change of clothes, because it's gonna get sweaty. I took some stakes and I marked out where the top and the bottom step were gonna lay. This will allow me to visualize where the staircase will be. To really box in the area under construction, I fed 550 cord from the top to the bottom stake, and I put in a middle stake to support the cord. I sourced a stack of railroad ties from the railroad. They're constantly pulling them off the rail and replacing them. Though many of them off the rail are in no good shape because of time and weather, a lot of them are in pretty good shape and can be used for landscaping around your property. My local yard sorts the good ones out and sells them for $15 a piece. I've heard some places there's a freebie pile. If you're interested, check out your local rail yard or call one of their reps. You might find some good material for a good price. If you plan to split them in half, a chainsaw is a pretty good tool to do it. The ties I have are 8 to 8.5 feet long, and I plan to dig the ends into the hill, so I don't have to be too particular about this cut. As long as it's close to the halfway mark, I'll be good. Railroad ties are pretty tough material, and they get that way from how they're treated. This makes them a really good option for outdoor use, but it also means that they're really tough on the chainsaw. Expect your chainsaw to need a good sharpening after a handful of cuts. If you don't sharpen your own, you just want to replace it, a new chain's about 15 bucks. You can definitely smell the oil in these things. They're pretty fresh off the railroad. You learn a lot from doing something for the first time. And in the first carry up the trail, I learned that I'm going to get strong today, because I got 15 more of these to go. If I had to do this again, I'd probably put a towel on my shoulder. The raw weight of the tie wasn't that bad, but it definitely smushed your shoulder quite a bit. Now that I've got approximately half my material up the hill, I just have to do it again. I am noticing the chainsaw cutting a lot worse than it was in the first couple cuts, but it's still doing its job. There's a little bit of a technique to picking them up. You really want to use more of your legs than your back so you don't hurt yourself. It's a little awkward at first, but I found standing them up vertical before I lifted them up helped. I heard from a commenter that as a chainsaw gets dull, it may be harder to cut a straighter line. I'm thinking that this was probably user error, but the chainsaw was definitely getting dull, so maybe that contributed. If you build the stairs the same way that I do in this video, you won't have to worry about that angled cut being a problem. Chainsaw's still holding on, maybe barely, but it's still working. A railroad tie could be up to 200 pounds, so cutting them in half, well, that makes 100 pounds. It may seem like I'm throwing these around pretty easily, but trust me, these are heavy, and this is a lot of work. I kept telling myself they don't get lighter, but there are fewer of them, so just do one more. Now that the material's at the site, it's time to start digging. My favorite weapon of choice for the day is a Pulaski. This tool is specially designed to fight forest fires. It's got two heads on it, one head to chop wood and the other one to dig dirt. Perfect for this application. These roots are a lot of work. When I thought carrying the ties up the trail was going to be the hard work, I was wrong. Removing these roots, definitely the hardest part, and by far the most time consuming. But eventually I got to placing the first step. I wanted the first step to feel natural. It's going to take a little more digging and leveling. I also don't really have a process yet, because this is my first step after all. So there's going to be a lot of learning in this first step. Though the Pulaski is really good for the cutting and digging, it's not really great for placing the steps. So I added a sledgehammer and a shovel. The sledgehammer was great for making minor adjustments and packing the dirt, and the shovel, well, for moving the dirt. I suggest the use of a small bubble level as well. So right now, this side is high, and the front edge is high. You don't want the stairs to be leaning downhill, especially on slippery days. This is all a very iterative process to get right, so be patient with it. Alright, this one is getting a lot closer. It's pretty good this way. This side just needs to be brought up the tiniest bit. Sometimes just a small amount of dirt will make the difference. With a little more packing and a couple of more roots removed, I'll be ready to place the second step. All right, I'm at this critical spot where I'm gonna place the second step. And it's critical because if you want this staircase to be very symmetrical and perfect the way up the hill, you wanna make sure that you have the depth that you're gonna put the second step, the rise perfect, and you gotta have that mapped out all the way up. I'm okay with it not being symmetrical because the feel I wanna have when I'm coming to the cabin is that I'm entering the woods and that I'm not walking up someone's deck staircase. I'm gonna make it feel like you're walking on a trail heading towards your adventure. To get that authentic trail-like feel, I'm not measuring anything. Instead, I'm gonna let my feet tell me what's right and what's wrong. I'm gonna place the step, and I'm gonna feel it out. Once the step's located in the right spot, I'm gonna make sure it's level, forward, back, and left and right. And that should be good. When you're walking up a staircase and you're not thinking about it, you know you've done it right. So just look for that feeling. Once you have the first 2 steps in, the remaining steps go in just the same. And always look like you're working hard, because you never know when the foreman's gonna show up. Though these roots look like a lot of work, I'm pretty lucky that they're mostly on the surface. They kind of disappear about 6 inches down. You might be lucky and not have to deal with any roots. Or you might be really unlucky and you might have roots all the way down through your dig. May I wish unto you a rootless dig. As you dig your way up the hill, you'll unearth more materials to use, and those can be useful to pack in on the lower steps. Once you get a couple steps in, you'll find a pattern, and you'll follow that pattern. For me, every step that I put in meant it was another step I got to climb to the next step I was putting in. I felt more accomplished each time I had to carry something that much higher up the hill. It was a nice feeling. Packing dirt with the sledgehammer worked pretty well. I think anything bigger would have been a little too big to fit in the spots I was packing. Now that I have an excess amount of dirt, I can start filling in the ends. Those wonky cuts that I was showing you earlier, filling in the ends will hide that. It also hides the different lengths of each step. As I cut away the roots, I just threw them to the side. I'll save that cleanup job for another day. They'll eventually find their way into a burn barrel. When you burn roots, it causes a lot of smoke, because they tend to be pretty green. That smoke can help cut down on the mosquitoes in an area. I might save these roots for my next project, cut down on the mosquitoes. We're about 3/4 of the way done placing these steps. Nice. Once all the steps are placed, there's a final step of placing rebar in each one of them. I'll show you that later in the video. I finally see the last roots that I have to tackle, and they were a real monkey's uncle. I'll sure be glad when I'm done with the root removal tasks. With enough force, the Pulaski cuts through just about anything, but some roots deserve a death by chainsaw. And I know what some of you are thinking. Oh, don't cut the ground. After you cut those railroad ties, the chainsaw is about as dull as it can get. There ain't no hurting it hitting the ground with it now. You can see the staircase is really coming together. And inversely, I'm falling apart. But I'm gonna have just enough left in the tank to finish this. You can see there's a seat up on the top of the hill. At one point in the day I had a heckler. It was nice having company as I worked outside. This is going to be such a game changer to have all these steps leading up to the cabin. Beautiful. When I initially brought the steps up the hill, I only ended up bringing 14. It looks like I'm gonna need 16 total. So I need 2 more from the bottom of the hill. But they're an exciting 2 more, because it's only 2 more. Come on, Kyle, stay tough. You're almost done. That's the energy we're looking for. The last step. I had a commenter suggest putting a double step in the top on the same plane. It's not a bad idea. If this top bit erodes a little bit, I might just add that second step. Alright, we've placed all the steps. A quick pass down to remove the excess dirt will make things look real nice. And lastly, we can move towards putting the rebar in, the final step of the installation. I got this auger bit. We'll see how it cuts through those ties. This is a 1/2 inch diameter, and I got the rebar to be 3/8 diameter, so it should slide in there pretty easily. That drilled really smoothly. If that's how it is the whole way, this is gonna be pretty easy. So I'm gonna take 2 of these, and I'm just gonna put them in so that they're sticking out like that. I'm gonna take some cord, I'm gonna tie it to each of these. We're gonna run a line all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. This way there'll be a nice straight line where all the holes are. It's an aesthetic step. I'm about halfway done now, and the auger bit is drilling just as smooth as it did the first drill, so that's great. I think that turned out pretty good. I am pretty impressed by this bit. I didn't know anything about choosing a bit. I honestly grabbed 2 that were hanging next to each other, only opened 1. I used the spider bit, and this other bit, the Irwin speed bore, I would love to open up and tell you how it compares, but it's $30 something, so I'm gonna keep it in its case and return it. I opened the spider bit just because it had a cool blue color, so good job, marketing team. Got a little upgrade to my hearing protection because cutting the metal is probably going to be much louder. So the idea is I have a bunch of 4-foot 3/8 diameter rebar. Before I came out here, I put a new saw blade on the saw. It's one that's rated to cut metal, and it has a picture of rebar on the front of it. The ties I have are only about 8 inches tall, and these are 4 feet long. I'm worried that if I try to drive a full 4 foot into the ground that I'm going to run into too many rocks, because there's a lot of big gravel softball sized rocks down there. So given that these things are only 8 inches tall, only about that much of the rebar is going to be in the tie, and the rest would be in the ground. I think that's just a lot, and so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut these in half. And now that all the holes are drilled, I can remove these stakes and the lines. Nice. If you have a tangled cord, a lot of times if you just spin it around in circles, it'll untangle. More times than not, it's tangled because it's twisted. If you cut these at an angle, it forms a little spike, and when you're hammering them into the ground, they go in a little bit easier. So I'm gonna cut them at a 45-degree angle. I have 16 of these 4-footers to cut, and I want them to be 2 feet long. So I put a post in the ground 2 feet away from where the cut will be made. I'm going to check it once, but then after that, I don't have to measure each piece each time. I just push it up against the post and cut. I don't have a lot of experience cutting rebar, but what I did learn is it hurts. All the little melty bits get splattered all over the place. You definitely want to wear eye protection when you're doing this. And I'd suggest a little bit heavier of a jacket. Some of those things are pretty hot. I got these little hot melty pieces of metal stuck to my shirt here a little bit. Ended up getting a couple of little hot pieces hit my neck. I'd suggest not doing this in some brush that would catch fire. Also, the position behind the saw makes a big difference. All right, all the cuts are made. Now to do a little cleanup. There was little bits of metal everywhere, and so I used a little magnet sweep to pick up. Got a lot of stuff off that. It worked pretty good, maybe better than expected. I bought this tool when we built the cabin, because we have a dog that likes to run laps around the cabin and I didn't want her stepping on a nail. Looks like it's getting some more use. I have 16 stairs, so I made 32 of these pieces. I'm just gonna walk up and down the stairs, place spike down, and I'm gonna populate every single one of the holes. Populating all the holes with the rebar was a pretty satisfying step. It made me feel like I was close to the finish line, and that's because I am. All I gotta do is hammer them in now. Depending on what ground you have, this could be harder or easier than the way I'm making it look right now. I think I got pretty lucky. Most of these went in pretty smoothly. Very few of them needed some extra oomph. All of them have gone in pretty smooth with just the framing hammer. This one seems to have run into a decent sized rock, so I'm gonna hit it with the sledge. Hopefully it doesn't deflect and push the step. Right through it. One thing I am noticing when I'm hammering is it's adding a lot of shock and vibe to the stair. I'm noticing these little stress cracks, little tiny ones in the dirt here. I suspect that those are also propagating down along the entire back edge. I'll probably repack with the sledge afterwards, and after a rain or two, I'm hoping that things really settle in. Here's more of those little cracks that are forming at the interface. Coming down the final stretch, and it feels awesome. The last two go in without much of a problem. That's a good thing. To finish up, I cleaned off the top of the stairs and I repacked to fill those stress cracks. I finished the stairs! Well, that was a lot of hard work, but man, does it look good and it feels good. If you're interested in following along as I develop the rest of this property, check out the YouTube channel Wicked Alaska. See you in the woods.